You ever want to have one of those days where just something super cool walks through the door? This is it. Quite possibly the most expensive set of irons that I need to work on. So let's customize an even more custom set of irons. Yep, you guessed it. It is the Nicklaus Miura collaboration set of irons. Now, the set of irons are obviously blades that Jack Nicklaus likes in design parameters. And they are built by Miura-san and for Miura. And so what do we see here? Well, what we see is there's a particular shape that Mr. Nicklaus likes. He likes a flatter sole. He also likes a particular amount of offset, literally none. It's measured in millimeters and it's in single digits, if that gives you any idea. What I've gone to find out is these things sold out in a week when they were presented, and they are just an outstanding set of golf clubs. I mean, you don't expect anything less from the makers of Miura anyway. They're world-renowned in their ability to actually provide a forged product. It's just what it is. Now you combine the how shall we say it, the needs or the looks or the reasons why Nicklaus did what he did, and you have yourself one heck of an iron. Now, when these things sold out in a week, I went back onto eBay just to see what would happen, because typically you can gauge a lot of stuff from that. And used sets are still going for more than what people paid for them. Newer sets are going for around $6,000, and stories go they've been selling for around 10. So these are $10,000 sets of irons, $6,000 sets of irons brand new, $3,000 to $4,000 in the used category. Now, I'm going to get fairly critical here. Now, one would think that when you go on there and apparently you could get these things built for you. Every set that I've seen so far has been different. I went on the YouTube and TXG had a set, Alex had a set, and they were different. They had the tour wrap grip, the 2G tour wrap grip, and had some sort of either Modus or KBS shaft in it. Now what I'm looking at is I have a corded grip from Golf Pride, and I have some Nippon 950 GHs. So I don't know what commemorative means other than it's a really good collaboration. All right, now I have seen where they have these certificate or these special shaft bands that say, hey, this was from that particular set. The ones I've seen have a more of a gold and black, and this is not it. Although this says Jack Nicklaus and has the Miura on it, which would lead me to believe that this is it, that if I'm putting this thing on, this better have not the first bubble, first wrinkle, or anything like that. And that's not the case. If you're going to pay like this thing ought to be dead solid perfect, right? And that it's a minor thing. But again, when you buy a Lamborghini, you expect everything to be in place, even if it's a sticker. And that's what it is. Now they finish it off, and wonderfully finished off with, apparently those are BB&F, the 1-inch ferrules. So what are we going to do? Well, the owner of these, his name is Pete, and Pete is in his mid-70s and's got a solid game, to the point he told me he took these guys out, and the first 4 holes in a very lovely wind shot 4 under, and I'm like, why do I want to even touch these 4? And he says he's going to play them, he's going to put them in the bag, he's going to make a round with them, and that's what he's going to do. Okay. So we fit him, and in another set of irons, we fit some ACCRA 80s. Some ACCRA 80s. Now, ACCRA is a very fine shaft, actually from Japan, that's distributed out of Canada for us club makers. And we made a set, and he likes them, and he wants another one of those irons or iron shafts in his set. Well, ACCRA has redesigned their shafts in their logo, so I think this is a much better look. It's not as busy as the original one. It'll give it a classic look. If you take a look at it, it's got the wave where you can see the weave in the graphite, and then it starts here and it starts getting painted over, and there's almost an embossing kind of flavor right here in the white / pearly, and then it goes down into a nice gloss black. And we're going to finish it off with a slightly shorter ferrule to give it a more modern look. Okay, so that's what it's going to be. We're going to tear apart most expensive set of irons, and we're going to put them back together. This is an entire build, so it's going to take a while. So stay with us, and if you're the things that you're already familiar with, just forward on. Now, before we get started, like, subscribe, hit all that stuff across the bottom, and that way you get more of this information, and this information gets out to the YouTube universe. If you like what you're seeing, we do a live stream on Mondays, 5:30 p.m. Eastern, and we talk about the same kind of stuff just for people from around the world. Join us. It's a lot of fun. And ask your question, and we'll see what we can do from there. All right, now we got that out of the way, let's go to the bench, and let's take apart some expensive clubs. All right, I've carefully taken out each one of the clubs, and we're going to start with the 3. And these things are just so nice to look at. The lines are just so clean. The bottoms are just thin, like everybody would think in the way of butter knives. There is just a little hint of offset, not a bunch, and it has the Nicklaus Golden Bear with his signature, the Miura brand, and then forged in Japan on the back. Again, with the Nippon 950 and the S-Flex and the corded grip from Golf Pride. And we're seeing the Nicklaus Miura sticker on it. Now, if any of you guys watch any other channels, I like doing car detailing as a break from this. Yeah. And one of the channels I like is called Ammo NYC, and the fellow on there, he does a lot of expensive cars, and he does a lot of charity type work as well, and it's a good guy. And I like the way he progresses through, whether it's a very expensive car or whether it's a standard car. The process is pretty much the same, but you do your research, and he does. He shows he does his research, takes his time. Process pretty much the same, and you got to take it step by step and be very careful. And that's what we're going to do here, right? I've kind of referenced these to Lambos, and in the way that they come out, I don't see why we wouldn't. But the process for removing them is going to be the same. We're going to use a Bernzomatic torch. We're going to use this, and we're going to hit it for about 60 seconds, maybe a little bit longer, because Miura stuff is actually a bit tighter in its specification. And then we're going to try and twist it off. We like keeping the grip on and all this stuff because it gives you that torque that you can pull this off. Now, typically, if you're one of these guys that you're going to do it on your own set, you're going to want to wear some gloves, because this can get pretty hot if you're wild with your heat. In this particular case, we're going to leave it towards the hosel. Okay, a little over a minute. Let's see if we can get it off there. And we can. Alrighty. So we didn't do it with too much damage to the ferrule. And in each case, we're going to clean this out while it's warm. Alrighty, so we got it out, and what I use is I'll use the brush on the end of this, and it goes in. Okay, and I clean it out, and I tap on my bench over here, and I keep doing it until nothing comes out. All right, nothing. And this is the same I do with everyone, but I want you guys to know that's how it's going. Now, this has a chamfer, this has a chamfer in it, and that means a angle over which the head is made. And I don't know if we'll be able to pick that up or not, but if we look, it's right here on the edge. And what that's for is to prevent creating a shear point when you're making irons. That doesn't mean I need to put in a shouldered ferrule. It just means that they've taken the time to really make, then this is very distinct. So, I mean, just world class, that's what I'm saying. So, let's take off all the rest of them. I'm going to speed it up for your viewing enjoyment. So, let's get started. If you guys recall, I'm going to stop in the middle of this. If you guys recall the way that Miuras are made, this is an S20C metal, so it's a very soft carbon steel. And then if Miura stays true to form, they spin mill the hosels on, and that's basically taking either I don't remember, but it's either taking a solid piece and spinning at high speeds and watching it self-weld itself to the head, and then drilling the hole for the hosel in relationship to the head, or it's already hollowed out and then they fix it afterwards. But then there's a lot of grinding, and what I'm noticing when I take this off is there's a lot of grain from the grinding of it, and it just makes it look super uniform. It's really kind of cool to be working on these things. Show you what I was doing. On another drill, I have just a smaller drill bit that I use to drive into the bottom to get any of the glue that might be on the bottom of the hosel. And then what I did is I switched to a new brush because the other one, the fibers were starting to get bent and they weren't really picking up the extraneous amount of glue. And I kept seeing just kind of a flash of, you know, a little bit extra. It was clean, but not to the level of clean we're looking for. So that's what we're looking for. Alrighty, so now we got them all clean. So now that we've got them apart, the next part is we've got to see all the parts we're using in order for this thing to be balanced, correct, frequencies, the whole 9 yards. So now we're going to go to the measuring bin. right, so the next step of this is before we even think about putting it together, we need to actually measure everything. We measure the heads, and we're looking for about a 7-gram increment in between. We are measuring the shafts, and we're looking for them to be the same, and and at the grips, and we're looking at them to be the same. Now, industry practice says as they are, there's a range for forgiveness, okay? So if you have something between, let's say if you're shooting for a 7 and you're really using some high-end stuff, 1 gram either way would be acceptable. All right. If you're really just being absolutely precise about it, it would be right on target. But 1 gram either way, and that's with grinding, the way the materials get compressed, that kind of thing. 1 gram over a 250 some grams, that's okay. Now the same thing goes for shafts, right? Again, in the industrial making of them, a couple of grams either way is still extraordinarily good. Most shaft companies would take 3 to 5, and ACCRA is an outstanding golf shaft. And as you can see, when we measured these guys, that we were within, out of 8 shafts, 1 gram. 8 shafts, 1 gram. That is pretty daggone spectacular. All right. And the other part is that the grips measured out, and they started at 62 and some change, and that ended up at 63 and some change. So we're looking pretty good for a balance here, right? Now you go, Jim, so Jim, you go, hey, how do you know you're tracking all that? Well, I have a build sheet. And I write everything that's on the build sheet: length, loft, lie, flex, swing weight, total weight, head weight, shaft weight, grip size, color, even the ferrule color and size. Now, in this particular instance, when I'm looking at this, the heads are within that 1 gram span. The shafts are from 77.3 to 78.8. I'll take that. And the grips go from 62.7 to 63 and some change. So 63.5 or 6 or what it is. So these things should balance out without needing any help. Now the next part is assembly, right? Number one, we got to see if the shafts are going to go into the heads, and what do we do there? And then we got to go. Then after that, we got to put them together. So let's do some checking. All right. So the very first part of this, when we go to start doing the build, is does this fit this? And here's your answer. The answer is no. And did we think any different? No. So we're going to have to ream out the head. And you're like, Jim, it's a Miura. You're going to ream out the head. Oh, well, we've already taken the commemorative shaft out of it. So we're into full custom on right now. And what we're going to do is we're just going to ream it out to accept this shaft. Again, when you talk about doing these shafts in the past, the question will come up, well, why can't you just cone this thing? And what I mean by coning is shaping this so that will fit in here. And that can be done on some occasions. However, it's all about the amount of graphite material that is on the end of this guy. And some are very lightweight and have very little. Some are heavier, like 95, 100 grams, and they will have almost zero space in the bottom of here. And the more meat that's on the bottom of this thing, the easier it is to cone or shape. Now, in this one is right on the ragged edge, but the Pete, the golfer that we made these for, he wants them to feel and act like a set that I made him previously. And what we did previously is that the head was also a tapered club, and I reamed it out to accept these. So we're going to do the same thing so we can get there. Now, the funny part about this is you recall that I told you about his name's Pete, so we're calling this build for Pete's sake. And what we've done here is Pete is one heck of a golfer, and I want to talk about this. And if you look at that, right? If we look at this, and we see this, there we go. That is extraordinarily flat. This thing is just such a cool looking club. And, at first I didn't want to even touch these things, but now that we've broken the seal on it, we're going to go whole hog on this and just get them the way that the customer wants, and we're going to put them that way. So let's go ream some club heads. All right, I know I've talked about reaming before, but we'll cover it again because we're building this. And typically what you would want to use is cutting oil. And that would make it go nice and easy. And the first time I'm going to do this, I'm not going to use cutting oil with the idea of speed for building. If I don't use any cutting oil, then it's all cleaned out and I can go into assembly. If I use cutting oil, then I've got to clean it out, and you got to clean it out with something a little more aggressive, which is maybe an acetone or a cleaner of some variety, which totally disagrees with the adhesive that I'm getting ready to use, which means I got to clean out the cleaner and then I got to let it dry and evaporate and it's just basically time. So we're going to do it basically without any, and that's why I like doing it, just for the sake of speed. If I was looking at for the longevity of my bit, then I would use cutting oil. But in this case, we're going to do this. Now, if this is truly soft, this won't be a big deal. So we've got them all done. As you saw, what I did is I would take it down. I was watching my gauge over here, and I would go about an inch into it, pull it off, dump it all out, because all I'd be doing is squishing metal shavings, and that doesn't do anybody any good. And then empty it out, and then get the rest of them. That's what we've done. So back to the bench. I'm not sure if the camera turned off at some point there, but we got them frequency matched. It was a matter of trimming per the code, and then a little bit less or a little bit more depending on the results that we were getting, and they are in line, so we're good there. Did the spines and the flows on all of them, and as you may have seen or may not have seen, the whites and the reds sometimes worked and sometimes did not. So what I did is I went back and I did my own and marked them, and we got them to where they need to be. Now what we're doing is we're going to take them apart, and where we start that line, that's as far as we're going to braid the shaft. So we're going to make a little noise, but let's braid the shaft. Okay, we said we were going to put the 5/8 inch ferrules on, and we are. 2, 4, 6, and 8. What you see here with me is some other Miura. He's got a couple driving irons and a couple of hybrids, of which we're going to put together after this particular build in order to make that go. And we've got the Miura Geikens. This is a hollow body 23, an 18, a hybrid 4, and a hybrid 3. That's for another build. All right, so we're going to be using the 3M DP 480 black, or 420 black. And the 420 is a glue specifically designed for golf clubs. And we mix it for about 50 seconds initially, And then I put in some quick center, not a bunch, just enough, and another 10 seconds to go to a full 60 seconds. Alrighty, now that we got it mixed up, the idea is to make sure all the bubbles are gone. I get out my 2-inch square towels here, and what we're going to do is we're just going to get started. We'll get through this, and we do a little bit of, just a little bit of glue at the end, enough so that we get the ferrule, so the ferrule doesn't creep after installation. We get it on, not all the way obviously. That's what this is for. When I mean this is I have a wood piece on my flooring that I can pound against. Get enough glue in there to disperse it around. I get all the excess, so I try not to get it to stick, and it gives me an opportunity to see whether or not I've got glue that really got around it, and it did. Then I line up the Made in Japan with my line. Give it a couple of whacks. And clean off any of the excess. Because if we clean it up now, we do not have to clean it up later. There we go. Alright, piece of tape to prevent ferrule creeping. And that's basically gluing it in. Then we let it set until it's ready to work. So, let me, another viewing pleasure, we'll just keep going. Okay, we're into the home stretch of these irons, and the most expensive irons. The DP 420 black has not cured, but it's got to where it's workable. What does that mean? Well, there is a gel time, and there's a workability time, and then there's a cure time. In most every instance, the cure time will be 24 hours. Now, the gel time is when it starts getting goopy, and you really don't want to make any more clubs with it. And then the working time is where we can work with the golf club and get it to finish part to where we can cure it. Now, there are some times, and there's another glue that is predominantly used on the tour, and it is called DP 810, and it is really, really fast. You get about 3 clubs, 4 clubs tops, 6 clubs if you're working at Mach 5 speed, and what happens is in about 15 minutes, this thing is workable. In about 20 minutes, people are hitting on it. Now, I don't know if I necessarily would, from a professional standpoint, really want to do that, but I've seen as little as 30 minutes from trailer to grip and a person's using it. So you want to be, I guess it depends on the user, depends on the application of when you would really want to let that thing go. Personally, I'd let it go for a couple of hours before using it just to prevent failure, because the guys that are on tour hit it hard. I mean, they just hit it hard. So what do we have left? We have to finish the ferrules. We have to cut them to length. We have to do the specifications, and then we have to give them up. So the last bit here is the ferrules. The ferrules are the 5/8 inch black. There's no collars, there's nothing special, but now we have to finish them. And what I'm going to be doing here, because it's a satin finish in the head and a graphite shaft, I put a band of tape around it. And what the band of tape is just to prevent any marring of the shaft. Even with the belt that I'm using, it shouldn't do that, but I just do it as an extra precaution. Now, there are other belts out there. There's a cotton fiber belt, and that can do it. In fact, it can cut right through the paint. And that was the whole reason for me starting this. The felt belt just came out as recently as, say, a few years back in order for it to be used in this application, and it's wonderful. I would suggest it for just about anybody. Now, there are other ways to do this stuff by hand. You can get some sandpaper that is, say, around 100, 220 maybe, 100, no more than 120, around 220. I use emery cloth because it was only as wide as most of the ferrules, and you tape both sides, and you use the shoe shine method while it's sitting in a vise, and you turn it and do the shoe shine method until you get where you want it. And that does work. It's just very time consuming. Again, this is all time relevant, right? Now, I have done something where you can do these repairs at the home or using things in the house. Take a look at that. But we're going to do this because this is a really nice set of irons. So let's go finish some ferrules, and we'll talk about how we put the shine to it, and then we'll measure and cut. So again, what we've got here is we've got our bar that will support the shaft, so I don't have to worry about going back and forth. What we'll do is the belt will turn this way, and then we will turn the ferrule into the shaft. Now, it shouldn't take very much because there's not a lot of overhang. The belt's in pretty good condition so far, and we're going to turn on our fan, and we're going to do all 8 of them, and you'll just see us go very, very fast. So let's go. Now we're breaking inside the video because as I was putting this thing together, apparently something went wrong in the audio track. Maybe loss of battery. There's 1,000 excuses. None of them are very good. So I am going to narrate behind the scenes as we're doing this. It's much like using what Larry does at Ammo NYC in his videos where he talks into the behind. So hopefully we can do a very good part of that and just watch the last bit, which is where we do the finishing work and do some of the measuring. After using the felt belt, the technique we like to use is called cross-hatching. Cross-hatching is a technique where you go 90 degrees from the way that you were putting grain onto the ferrule before. So it goes with the shaft, and then what you see me doing right here is using acetone on a 2x2 paper towel, and I'm going along the shaft as opposed to with the shaft. And what that's doing is taking out the grain, and then it's also going to apply a shine to it. And it doesn't take a lot of pressure, and you got to watch, because sometimes what can happen is that you can take off too much material because some ferrules are softer than others. And what you're looking to do when you turn those is you're giving an inspection to ensure that the uniformity is good, that you don't see any extra glue boogers or anything to that nature. And that's what we do from the end to end. Now, typically on one of those I can get about 3 aside, so I'm good for about 6 clubs, and then I have to change it over. Now, let's go to the next step. Now, the third and final step to this ferrule finishing is the actual polishing. And what I use is yellow polish. I get the yellow polish from Grizzly. It's an H0183 fine yellow polish. And that brick that you see me holding right there is probably going to be enough to last any one person a lifetime's worth of ferrule polishing. Now I put it on an 8-inch unstitched buffing wheel, and we have to keep the wheel cleaned regularly. And we apply the polish in order for the wheel to take it and make it so that when we go to turn, that this thing will actually do polishing. Now, what you want to do is, after hitting the acetone, you want to give the ferrules a small amount of time to reset and reharden. If you do not, then what will happen is you can cause a tear actually in the ferrule, or it looks like a bubble of sorts. So what we do is, you see me, I will hold the shaft against the motor right there, and I will turn into the wheel, and all I'm doing is going to go around 1 or 2 times in order to ensure that the last bit of the cross hatching is accomplished. And that's what we're going to do, and then we wipe it off and make sure it is our final inspection before we're done. After good polishing, now the grips need to be installed. They've already been cut down, and we have to, get a connection to the club. And this is what we're doing right here. Now, what you've already seen is I've already made a line on the shaft. Why do I do that? And what I do is, there's a line on the back end of the grip, or the butt section, and there's a line at the opening of the grip. And what I'm doing is I'm putting the one line at the butt at the end of the shaft, and then I'm marking the other line, and that ensures when I go to lay the tape down on there that it doesn't stick out the end, and I can also close off the back end. We need to close off the back end and for this to work, so that the solvent will go down the tape, and the air will allow a cushion of air for this thing to ride along the shaft. Now, I'm using a 2-inch wide tape, and there are some out there that will use the 3/4 inch wide, and they use a winding motion in order to cover the shaft. However, that's very, very old school anymore, and this 2-inch tape is what we're looking for. Now, what we're trying to do here is ensure we have no wrinkles, and that the two seams meet together, and that we're either folding the tape in on itself, or we're twisting it and then pushing it inside of the shaft. And what you see every time I'm touching the shaft and I'm pulling over is I'm looking for making sure we don't have any burrs, and making sure that when we go to put it on, that we just don't get caught up. Now, as far as where one would want the seams to come together, 99 times out of 100, what we're looking for is right there at the 12 o'clock position, or the 6 o'clock position, as the case may be. What I tend to do is I tilt it at about 30 degrees so that it lays more into the fingers. If you were using something that was a thinner grip, like a Tour Velvet grip. The thicker ones like you see me installing here, it really doesn't matter too much, but it's just something to keep in mind when you're using thinner grips like the Tour Velvets, or a super lightweight type of grip. Now, after all the tape is on, now the next part is to use the solvent. The solvent is what makes the tape slippery. And what I line up my grips from lightest to heaviest to go from the tallest to the shortest of the grips. And I fill up the grip with my thumb over the weep hole that's on the butt section. I only fill it up maybe about halfway. I shake it inside the grip to ensure that the entire grip gets coated. And then what I do is I let it come out of the weep hole, because it's a smaller hole than trying to pour it out the tip in, although you can do it either way if you're comfortable. And then once I get it aligned, then I will stamp it on the ground to ensure the butt section seats against the shaft. Now, a couple of things that we've got to look for here is, how do we line it up? Well, what we do is we line it up by putting the club sticking up at the 12 o'clock, and I'm going down the middle of the shaft, but I'm looking at the bottom of the iron within the one score line or less, down to where the bottom of the club is at. and that gives you your proper alignment. So and it's key to put it into the clamp before you do this. And you let the solvent go up and down inside the tape, and that's what's getting it slippery. You put your thumb over the back of the hole so that you create this air pocket. It gives you an opportunity to adjust the grips the way that you want. Then you'll pull it out of the clamp and you'll check it to make sure that you're okay to go. And then you stamp it, or vice versa, just as you saw me there. And then that way we have a good seating. It's a good alignment. And then we'll wipe it down and take all the other hand oils off. And when it dries to a nice tacky finish. So let's finish the rest of these guys. All right, so we hope that we get through this. Apologies up front. Hopefully that you got a lot out of this. This is actually a lot of knowledge, a lot of tips, a lot of tricks in this video. So hopefully you took enough of these that you can get confidence of doing your own stuff. If you find yourself a little outside of your depth, just give us a call or email us and we'll be able to help you out of your situation, no problem. Okay, always. The owner of the golf clubs came and hit them, loved them immediately, says he thinks they're great, to the point he asked me if I hit the loft marks, which makes me think he very well may be hitting it a tad further. Now keep in mind, this guy's in his mid-70s and he's got game. It'd take probably 2 or 3 of me to even get close to beating this guy. So anyway, most expensive set we ever worked on. They were absolutely awesome. They were absolutely awesome to work on. I felt bad taking them apart, but I don't feel bad the way they looked and the way they came out. So thank you very much. Don't forget our live streams on Mondays, and that way you get to talk to me live on this very same topics. And as always, let's see your scores. Go low.